Assalamu alaikum viewers and welcome back to my channel English with Ayesha. Topic that I'm going to explain today is barriers in effective communication. Before going to discuss the factors or the barriers which cause problem in effective communication, I want to explain the meaning and the concept of barrier, that what barrier is. Barrier is an obstacle in a place that prevents us from completing certain tasks. So, in simple words, barrier is a hurdle or obstruction, we can say, or blockage of something that prevents the access of something. Now, we look at the meaning of communication barrier, that what communication barrier is. Communication barriers can be defined as the aspects or conditions that interfere with effective exchange of information, ideas, or thoughts. Here, exchange of information, ideas, and thoughts means communication. So, the aspects, factors, or we may say the conditions that interfere with exchange of information, ideas, or thoughts are known as communication barriers. So, barriers in effective communication is every obstacle that stands between the sender and the receiver. It is also known as noise or distortion in communication. Now, I hope you have cleared the concept of barriers or communication barriers. Now, we look at the different types of barriers in effective communication. There are several types of barriers in effective communication, which include physical barrier, cultural barrier, language barrier, emotional barrier, gender barrier, organizational barrier, and perceptual barrier. In the end of this video, I will also discuss two other types of barriers, which are physiological barrier and personal barriers. Now we discuss all these types one by one in detail. The first type is physical barrier. Physical barriers relate to disturbance in the immediate situation which can interfere in the course of an effective communication. There are some factors causing physical barriers. The first factor is physical disability. A physical disability is a physical condition that affects a person's mobility, physical capacity, stamina, or dexterity. This can include brain or spinal cord injuries, hearing and visual impairments, and many more. So, if a person has physical disability related to brain, sight, and other organs which plays role in communication, so he or she cannot communicate effectively. So, physical disability is a physical barrier in effective communication. Then the next physical barrier is environmental distortion. Environmental distortion means environmental barriers, which includes crowded and noisy environment. If you are surrounded by the crowd and noisy environment, then you can't convey or receive the message effectively. Environmental barriers also include the people talking around you, music playing in surrounding, telephone calls, and so on. So, there are the environmental barriers in effective communication. Another factor is time and distance. Because of improper time and lack of time and long distance, you can't communicate effectively. So, this factor is a physical barrier in communication. Next physical barrier is poor lighting. If you are communicating non-verbally, then poor lighting causes a distortion in effective communication. Next factor is uncomfortable sitting. If you are not comfortable, then you feel hesitate and can't communicate effectively. Next factor is hygienic room, which causing physical barrier in communication. Relates to the previous factor. Obviously, if you are sitting uncomfortably, you can't communicate effectively. Next physical barrier is too hot or too cold. If you are in uncomfortable room temperature, then it causes a physical barrier in effective communication. So these are the factors that come under the physical barriers in effective communication. The second type of barrier in effective communication is cultural barrier. Culture shapes the way we think and behave. Cultural difference leads to different in interest, knowledge, value, and tradition. Therefore, people of different cultures will experience these culture factors as a barrier to communication with each other. So there are again some factors causing cultural barrier. The first factor is diversified cultural background. Culture diversity makes communication difficult as the mindset of people of different cultures are different. The language, signs, and symbols are also different. Different cultures have different meaning of words, behaviors, and gestures. So cultural diversity is a cultural barrier. Then the second factor is language and accent. Ineffective communication due to a strong accent can create barriers in business. It may also have negative effects on job performance, cause missed job opportunities, affect educational advancement, and everyday life activities. It may also affect your self esteem. So, your improper accent is a cultural barrier in effective communication. And the next factor is religion. Religion also sometimes causes hurdles in effective communication. Sometimes a person may feel uncomfortable communicating with people from other religions because of assumptions about the other's belief and opinions. Third type of barrier in effective communication is language barriers, which is also known as linguistic barriers. When a person uses inappropriate words while conversation or writing, it could lead to misunderstanding between the sender and our receiver. Communication becomes difficult in situations where people don't understand each other's language. The inability to communicate using a language is known as language barrier to communication. So there are some factors causing language barriers. The first factor is difference in language. Difference in language is the most obvious barrier to communication, as two people speaking two different languages cannot communicate with each other. For example, an American goes to Arabia. The person does not understand Arabic language, and most people in Arabia don't understand English language. So when the person speaks, the communication is worthless as the other Arabian person does not understand it. Then the next factor is regional accent, dialect, and pidgin. The accent and dialect of people belonging to different places differs even if their language is same. Though the languages are technically the same in people using different dialects and accents, the meanings, implications, and interpretations of words are different, which may lead to various kinds of conflicts. Similarly, Pidgin is the simplified language used between people who don't speak common language. The implications of words are and phrases can create misunderstandings. For example, the abbreviation LOL used in chat language used to mean lots of love before, which changed to laugh out loud. If a person says lol, the second person can interpret the meaning in any way they want or from their understanding. People use both the abbreviations according to the context and need. Then the next factor is no clear speech. People who speak soft or in a small voice cannot be understood. The sender might be saying something, whereas the receiver might understand something else. Though speaking common language, people might have difficulty understanding the meaning of the message and the feedbacks. This might also be a cause of obstacle in effective communication. Then the next factor is use of jargons and slangs. Some jargons like adjournment, which is used by lawyers, and BP, which is used by doctors, stands for blood pressure, and so on, are only used by people in similar profession, which might be a cause of language barrier. Similarly, the use of slang also makes communication ineffective. Then the next factor is grammar and spelling. Grammar and spelling becomes a barrier in communication as people from different parts of the world can be using it differently even in a particular word. Similarly, grammar and spelling mistakes create a huge communication barrier in written communication. Then the next factor is literacy and linguistic ability. Some people have low vocabulary in a particular language, whereas some very high. The literacy and education increases the need to learn new words. It might not be the only reason. People can increase their vocabulary by reading and with their own interest too. Vocabulary is also less if a person uses the language as their unofficial language. Likewise, linguistic ability is the capability of a person in a particular language. If a person with high vocabulary and linguistic ability talks with another with low ability, the second person will not understand the words used, leading to miscommunication of whole message. Then the next type of barrier is emotional barrier. The emotional state may influence your capacity to make yourself understood and hamper your understanding of others. Many times, emotional barriers on your part or the part of the person you are speaking, which may inhibit your ability to communicate on an effective level. Fear, insecurity, stress, and mistrust are the factors causing the effective communication. Then the next type of barrier is gender barrier. Relationships, respect, workplace authority, and education are common ways men and women are pitted against each other. The barrier arises because men and women have different ways of thinking and communication. The first factor under gender barrier is fear or hesitation. Some people feel hesitate to speak in front of opposite gender, which might cause hindrance in effective communication. Then the next factor is shyness. Some people feel shy in front of the opposite gender, which might cause the barrier in effective communication. Then the next factor is environment and misunderstanding. Environment and misunderstanding also cause some gender barriers in effective communication. Then the next type of barrier is organizational barrier. All the internal factors which stymie or block the process of communication are known as organizational barriers. Factors that comes under the organizational barrier are one-way flow, too many level in organization structure, information overloaded, authoritarian attitude of management, insufficient communication training. These are the factors that come under the organizational barrier. Then the next type of barrier is perceptual barrier. The most common problem is that the people have different opinions. The varied perceptions of every individual give rise to a need for effective communication. We all have our own preferences, values, attitudes, origins, and life experiences that act as filters on our experiences of people, event, and information. There are some factors that comes under the perceptual barrier. Difference in understanding and difference in perception of reality are the factors that come under the perceptual barriers. Then the next type of barrier is physiological barrier. Physiological barriers to communication are related with the limitations of the human body and the human mind, which includes the factor of memory, attention, personal discomfort, ill health, which includes poor eyesight and hearing difficulty, unhappy emotions, and people's state of mind. Then the next type of barrier is personal barrier. Factors that comes under the personal barrier are lack of confidence, personal shyness, emotions, discomfort in sensitive situations. That's all from my side. Hope this video lecture is very much informative and beneficial for you and you like it. If you like, then give a thumbs up and don't forget to share and subscribe my channel. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Goodbye and Allah Hafiz.